What is going on, everybody? Justin here with Alpha Wash. So I want to talk with you today about something that I've heard a little bit in the past, and I want to touch on it because I think there can be some misleading information online. So when I say that, especially about the pressure washing industry in specific. So when I say that, what I mean is these people are giving advice based on their region, and they're not looking at the big picture as a whole. They're not looking at the whole country and everything, that all the differences that there is in a country. And I'm not going to say any specific names because I'm not judging by any means, and I know that what I've seen, they provide massive value to people, and that's awesome. But I just want to say to keep in mind that everywhere in the country is completely different, and I know there's pressure washing companies that are outside of our country and other countries. So just keep in mind, and yes, it's good to listen to other people, but also keep in mind of what's in your own mind and pay attention to what's going on, because you don't want to be doing things that don't make sense. If that makes sense, you don't want to be doing something just because somebody else said it when it's obviously not working for you. And what I'm getting at is I want to talk about surfactants. So surfactants are something that you add into your bleach, and you add it into your bleach and it helps foam the bleach up. Because bleach and water, if you spray it, it's not very foamy at all. But if you add a surfactant to it, it actually makes it a little more soapy. And with it being a little more soapy, it actually helps it cling to the roof and cling to the siding. So I'll give you the pros and the cons, because that's how I like to look at every situation. I try to look at it from every perspective, not just one single perspective, because if you're only looking from one single perspective, in my experience, I made a lot of bad decisions. So hopefully y'all can learn from that and find some value from that. So what I found with surfactants, so we'll start with house washing. So for house washing, I like a very, very small amount of surfactant. We use a surfactant called Slow-Mo, and it is the most concentrated surfactant that I've ever seen. And when I say that, like, we use a measuring cup to pour it in, and we'll pour it in that measuring cup, and if there's a little bit that gets left in the measuring cup, it'll actually completely gel over, and it'll be like this thick gel. So a tiny, tiny bit of Slow-Mo will make a ton of, will go a long ways, is what I guess I'm trying to say. It will go very long ways. So we use a tiny, tiny amount. I believe it's like a quarter of a cup, maybe in 100 gallons of bleach for downstreaming. And then for the soft wash, hang on, let me back up. I'm getting off track here. So house washing with the surfactant. So what I've found is when you spray the bleach on, say that you're downstreaming, so if you use a wider fan tip, that'll actually help it cling to it and not necessarily spray and then run, because if you don't have it fanned out enough, the liquid's hitting it in one concentrated spot. And when it's hitting it in one concentrated spot, you're gonna have a lot of runoff. Whereas if you have a wide fan and you sweep it like that, you're getting just enough liquid up there to sit on the siding. And what I found is, if you're spraying it correctly, like I just mentioned with the fan tip, and you've got a little bit of surfactant added to it, what that'll actually do is that'll help that bleach sit there, and you'll only have to coat it one time usually. And one time, we use a 5 gallon per minute for downstreaming, so we use an 8 gallon per minute for rinsing. So what we'll actually do is we'll have the surfactant set up with our downstream tank for our 5, and we use the M5 tip for downstreaming, which is the twist tip that can twist from a fan all the way to a shooter tip. So basically from there, the only downside that is possible from using surfactant on siding is that it can make the rinsing process take much, much longer than it needs to take. So basically, like on windows and things like that, that's what we've noticed, that it can actually make your job a little less efficient, if that makes sense. So you want your job to be as efficient as possible, obviously. you don't want to go out there and be doing anything that adds or takes away from your time. So that's why I recommend with going with just a small amount of surfactant. And whenever you're downstreaming houses, don't go with too much. If you find yourself that you're having to rinse for much longer, then you probably got too much in there. But the thing about, if you don't use surfactant, what I've found is, even if I fan it out like we were talking with the M5 tip and I sweep it across, even at that point it still runs down, and what I'll find is I'll actually have to recoat it. That's actually why we downstream with the 5 gallon per minute, because it puts out a little less water, so it mixes the bleach a little stronger in the tank. And I mean, not in the tank, but as it's spraying it out, it mixes the bleach a little stronger. And what that actually does is that makes it to where we can go around the house and downstream at one time and come behind it with the 8 and be rinsing it all off. And what we found is, if we tried to downstream bleach with the 8, we'll actually have to downstream it twice before we can rinse, because there's too much water. It's making it run off the side of the house, or the 8 just dilutes it down more because it's more gallons per minute. Either one, and it could be a combination of both. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was roofs. And this is where I've seen some contradictions, things I don't agree with on Facebook. I've seen several guys that have said you don't need any surfactant for roofs. You can just spray on bleach and it works great. Well, that's kind of going back to what I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about people are giving advice for their region only and not thinking about the fact that everywhere in the country is different. For example, I know these guys that are not using surfactant. In their area, almost all the roofs are walkable. They're jumping up on top of them and walking them like it ain't nothing. And yes, I can see where that would work perfectly. I've done many roofs like that are flat, and you don't really have to have any surfactant when you're up on top of them and you're spraying them with a fan tip. So where I see contradictions in it is, if I only base what I seen on the job site off of what other people are telling me, then I'd never be actually thinking for myself. And that's honestly key to being an entrepreneur. Like, yes, get educated, but always remember to think for yourself. Don't never stop thinking for yourself. That's something my dad taught me at a very young age. So basically what we want to do, or what I'm getting at, is our roofs in our area that we wash, they're very steep. And with them being very steep, we have to spray a lot of them from a ladder, and that means that we can't walk on the roof, so we're spraying from the ladder up with a shooter tip. And with that shooter tip, if we didn't use surfactant, it would just run off and it would flood out into the yards. Or if we had them bagged up at the bottom, it would fill those bags, slam up. So that's why I say it's not the best to take everybody's advice. If I just base our process off of what I read off Facebook and other places, then we'd be burning up people's grass left and right. But I actually don't. I have to base it off of our own experiences. And I know in the past when I've tried it, it didn't go very good without surfactant on the steep roofs. But as far as so I recommend going with surfactant if you're using steep roofs. Or if you're cleaning steep roofs, I recommend going with surfactant. Like I said, we use the slow-mo surfactant. It works awesome, and we don't get paid by that company or anything like that. I'm always going to be honest with y'all. I'm always going to keep it real, and that's what we use. That works awesome. So give it a try if you are looking for some surfactant. And what I've found is I can actually save money on that surfactant, because there's so much less liquid that you have to buy for so much more. It goes a lot farther than your average 5 gallon bucket of surfactant, if that makes sense. I'm kind of overcomplicating it, but that's basically what I'm trying to say. It'll go much farther than your typical 5 gallon bucket of surfactant. So it'll save you money in the long run. But And one other point I want to make, and I guess it'd be just a follow-up reminder, but always stay thinking for yourself and pay attention to what's going on in the moment, and don't base everything that you do off what somebody else says, because if somebody tells you one thing and you keep trying it and you're having a lot of friction doing it, then that means it's not working for you, and that's fine. Everybody has to find their own way that works for them, but you got to keep it within yourself, and always be open to taking advice and trying new ways, but don't be stubborn. If somebody tells you something, you try it and you try it and you try it and it doesn't work. Yes, I have found myself doing this, that especially if the person is farther ahead than where I'm trying to get, I've found myself like almost trying to force that thing to work, but it really doesn't work like that. That'll typically cause friction and cause you to have a lot of mental blocks and things like that. So we don't want to go down that road. So y'all keep it in between the ears. We all have the power that runs through us, that we can change this world if we believe in ourselves and believe that we're worthy of doing it. So hope y'all found some value in this video. If y'all did, leave a comment down below. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll catch y'all in the next one.